My name is Elana, and I use they, them pronouns.
And my name is Jessie. I use she, her pronouns.
And
And
we're
we're
making
making
menches.
menches.
Making Menches is your home for queer, anti-Zionist Jewish ritual, radical education, and community.
Well, it's just us. Perfect
Well,
start.
how do we do this again? Okay.
That was literally my intro, Jesse, was well, it's just us.
Was
So,
great.
um, hi everyone. This is so weird, but today it's literally just myself and Jesse. We're getting back to our roots. Roots, which is
Oh,
kind of perfect because Tu B'Shvat is coming up. Mm, Little Easter egg there. Happy Gregorian New Year. Um, it's been quite a start to the year. How are you feeling?
it's hard to feel hopeful. I keep telling people like it's been worse historically in the history of the world, and then internally like, oh no, what are we going to do? But I have to say that I do have hope that this moment is unfortunately radicalizing a lot of people. Somebody very close to me who is very much a Zionist the other day was like, I'm done with the ADL. And I was like, whoa,
Whoa.
okay.
What was the
So
deal breaker for them?
I think it was the whole it wasn't a Nazi salute moment where they
Uh,
were like, nope, this is done. So unfortunately, it comes with the rise of fascism that liberals finally realize that it's fascism, but I am hopeful that the resistance grows stronger every day. Not to sound too Star Wars about it, but for real.
I was gonna be like, that's big Star Wars vibes. I love it though. I mean, like,
Pro Star Wars energy here.
my aside about Star Wars and all of those like movies in that theme is just like I don't understand how production companies and directors like produce films like that without seeing the like layering parallels to our society and how like the people in power and our government literally is the bad guys and the resistance is like this like the people that we're supposed to like empathize with and love, and yet in real time the resistance is the people that everyone is shitting on all the time. I'm just like, please make it make sense. Let's be real with each other for a second. Like,
No, so real. This is another a spin-off podcast we're going to start, which is just science fiction is real life, and I will talk about it nonstop. But I think this also falls in the category of like not everything is about the Nazis, where it's like some things are worse than Nazis, and it's American fascism, and everyone's like,
oh,
this is exactly like 1939 Germany, and I'm just like, no, this is exactly like America all the time. So that makes me think of Star Wars because they're like, so much of this is based off like Nazi imagery. And I'm just like, yeah, well, America home grew its own
right. And
fascism.
literally like inspired Nazism. Like that's quite literally what the playbook is from. And
Literally.
so it's just like, yeah, everything is hard. And I really agree on the like, it can be hard to remember like things have been this bad before when you're just simply like that is true, and we are living in this moment now and we weren't living in the before times, and like it's just a wild thing to experience. It can be a wild thing to experience while acknowledging like we have the tools to engage with it, but
Mhm.
it's so it's so nuts. Like someone asked me how I was doing yesterday and I was like, they were like, I would imagine you're not doing so well. And I was like, oh my God, how do they know? Like, I feel like I haven't said anything. And I was like, what makes you say that though? And they were like the state of the world. And I was like, oh yeah. Like on top of literally everything else, like just simply the state of the world is enough to make everyone feel absolutely horrible.
Mhm.
So here we all are together. Hopefully by the time this episode has come out, we will have all, if you were with us, spent some time starting to process some of that grief. I know that I really struggle to like actually feel the grief instead of just being like, well, that has to go in this compartment for me to deal with whenever I have time to deal with it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of spaces to process grief collectively. It's like treated like you have to handle it on your own kind of individualistic illness situation.
Yeah, let's make it make grief communal again. Maybe like those those framing that joke framework is just painful now, but
No, for real. Make grief communal again. Normalize not upsiding everything. I am so tired of people being like, well, but the good news is, like, yes, there's always hope, but there's sometimes not good news, and that's okay. Let's just normalize being bummed out a little bit and being okay with that. And it's a bad time, and we have to accept
yeah.
that.
And it's literally been a bad time for so long. I'm just like, oh my God, like the horrors, they certainly do persist. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, we saw in January a ceasefire. I'm putting quotes around that because there have been like numerous violations, but it's held. And also simultaneously, there's been like massive invasions and violence in the West Bank. So all of the commentary online around like ceasefire for whom is so real.
I agree. I think the news of ceasefire after all this time and the reality that ceasefire is great for some people because they want to bury their dead and that is like enough right now in this time of horror. But that ceasefire in one area of Palestine comes at the expense of literal entire blocks of housing and human lives in the West Bank. Is like exactly like you said, like ceasefire for who and ceasefire at what cost. And I think the Gaza colonization plan that Trump just announced too should radicalize us further to think more about what direct action and what protest really looks like in this moment. Like, it's not enough anymore to have rabbis get arrested in the Capitol. It's not enough anymore to call out Chuck Schumer at his home or to like shitpost your synagogue. Like, what is the next step? And I think this is a time of
Mm.
radical dreaming and like a time of radical action. So it should only inspire us to think more critically about what comes next in terms of our actions that we take.
I was about to be like, yeah, like for example, more assassinations, but I'm like, can I say that? I'm like, when does
Yeah.
our podcast literally get taken down from the internet?
What
Um,
people would have to listen to it enough on the other side.
True, and they never will. Um,
Normalize assassinations.
Literally make grief communal again, normalize assassinations. Like that is literally the energy I'm coming into 2025 with. And I think beyond just like trying to push back against these systems in more like in those direct ways, it's also like, what are you building and how are you organizing that's unrelated to trying to engage in the fuckery? Like I think there is a place and a lot to be said for like doing those pushbacks like protest or like bird
Yeah.
dogging politicians or assassinating CEOs and presidents. But like what are you also doing to build? I always come back to this quote by Kwame Ture when people he says when you see people calling themselves revolutionary, always talking about destroying, 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 but never talking about building or creating, they're not revolutionary. They don't understand the first thing about revolution. It's creating. And I think that is like so important for us to hold on to and really where we need to be like sinking into in this moment. Like, how can we connect to our communities? And I don't mean that in like a be in community with your people like way that it's just like all over the internet, but like actually heed some of that information about like how to protect your neighbors, how to start like getting to know your neighbors, like how to talk to strangers, how to care for unhoused people in your community, how to like grow your own medicine, how to grow your own food. Like these are actual things you can learn how to do when you feel that despair that do matter and like will help as we build what comes after this collapse that is happening, that we're literally witnessing. So, like, if you pass your neighbor in the hall, be like, hey, I'm so and so, and I live in apartment da da da. Like, nice to meet you. Like, literally, just as simple as that. Like, leave your
Yeah.
neighbors a note on their door or something. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It can just be silly things. And then, like, other things come from that that are so beautiful and communal. Like, I have like a really sweet, like, older neighbor, and like, we're not like besties, but we're like, I would consider him part of my like local community. Like, we say hi to each other every time we see each other. We'll like chat about what's going on in our lives, and like my packages were getting stolen, and I like ran into him once when I was looking for a package, and he was like, "Oh, well, like I'm home all the time because I'm retired. Like when I see your packages, I'll just like take them upstairs for you." Like little things like that, but it's like you have to like plant those seeds, or those connections are not they're not just going to happen out of thin air. Like you do have to get through the slightly uncomfortable first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you have to be mindful about where you want to put your energy. Like it goes back to organizing always, but like you're not going to push the middle further left. You're going to push people on the left further left. And same thing with like who you're going to invest time and energy in socially is like invest in people who sustain you and sustain your community and your nourishment. Like arguing with that person that you always argue with might not be the best use of your time and energy anymore. And it might be like what you're talking about, like building, like with the people who you kind of know and think you kind of agree with, like how far can you push that? What could come of that? And it
Mm.
makes me think also if you're like, yeah, I wish I could, but I don't have any credentials, or like, yeah, I wish I could, but I don't have anything that gives me any authority to start anything, is that Yiddish proverb that is like, 9 rabbis doesn't make a minyan, but 10 shoemakers do. And
Oh,
so we could all be just shoemakers coming together to destroy
best of luck.
empire. Or make a minyan, or make a minyan where you are.
And is making a minion not destroying an empire?
There's the episode title.
I know,
Um,
clip.
clip, clip.
um,
So yeah, in this time of terror and awful things happening every day and the worst headlines appearing on our newsfeed constantly, we choose to build and we choose to find our people and collaborate and rally our energy to create beautiful things. So, Alana, what are some of the beautiful things that we are creating with our community right now?
well, this past week, if you're listening to this now, probably we had a Shabbos grief gathering with Rabbi Elliot Kukla and a dear friend Aro Shin, who did a somatic practice, and the wonderful Jessie Taylor gave a devar. But coming up, we have a Tu B'Shvat event. We're going to be doing a Tu B'Shvat poetry event where we'll talk a little bit about Tu B'Shvat, but hear a lot of poetry related to Tu B'Shvat themes of like nature and mysticism and being, both like in the sense of where we are and who we are. Um, Also like laying the groundwork for a leftist Jewish media collective. Stay very tuned. That's coming in the very near future. And if you're interested in being part of a leftist Jewish media collective, reach on out to us. Also just consistent monthly Shabbats, y'all. Finding space in New York to host the amount of people we're getting for Shabbats that is wheelchair accessible and available on Friday nights, and like we can actually afford, because I don't know if y'all realize how expensive space is slowly going to be the death of me. However, I'm trying. In the meantime, we're hosting a lot of virtual Shabbats at least once a month. Um, so you can always go on our website on our events page and find out when the next event is. The poetry series is also going to be every full moon, by the way. So look forward to that every month. We're going to be doing a poetry open mic or workshop with Jessie Taylor, Moonwork on Instagram, around the full moon each month. So what else are we doing? Am I missing anything? I feel like there's so many things percolating.
No, I mean, nothing else we can announce yet, but if
Ooh.
you if you are listening to this and you don't want to be on Instagram or Meta in the metaverse anymore, please sign up for our newsletter slash email list slash Google group. Um, If you join our Google group, you'll get our newsletter, so that's fine. But please stay in touch with us and make sure that you have a way to access our events because you don't have to be on Meta to stay current with us.
Very true. And the newsletter looks so good.
Oh my
Jessie
God, yeah.
does
Revamped
an
newsletter.
incredible
Yeah.
job.
It's literally
It's
just
really
Alana
awesome.
telling me to use the tools that we have at our disposal, and it worked. So imagine that.
And this is just your friendly reminder that Making Munches is, as of now, a two-person show. Jessie and I do all of the things to make
All of
all of the
the
things happen. Like podcast editing, Jessie does that. Usually there's just a person who does podcast editing, but it's Jessie.
like
Creating the
graphic
newsletter.
design. Graphic design. Alana does all the graphic design. Some people get paid just to do that for their whole jobs. Yeah.
True. I love Canva.
Website
Yeah,
design, website updating, website maintenance, everything social media that looks good. That's Alana.
we're doing our best. It's a lot of planning, literally so much and so much effort to make the events happen. And we love to do it because this is our passion and this is our community. But this community only exists if y'all are also a part of it. So if you have not donated to Making Mentions before and you want to allow this community to continue growing, that's one way you can do it. Other ways you can do it are keep your eyes peeled for like virtual or in-person support roles for our events, like being a door greeter or like collecting links from the chat on Zoom. Like everyone has something different in terms of what they can bring to the community. For some people, it's like, I'll give you $5, please stop talking. And for someone else, it's like, I can't give you $5, but I can like hold down welcoming people to Shabbat. And so this is just my push. This is your community. It will only continue to exist if y'all like contribute to it the same way that Jessie and I have contributed to it. So we appreciate you so much and we can't wait to continue building with you all. And yeah, we're excited for this season of, or this rest of this season of this podcast. We took a little break, but now we're back. Um, Maybe you'll get some more like Jessie and Elana one-on-one episodes. So let us know if you're liking just hearing us talk or if you wish we would be quiet.
And as a treat for you, we are in dialogue with our 2022 selves.
Literally would have been you teaching me in preschool. Like, God, I wish we had footage of that.
From our 2022 Not Your Bubby's Tour School Instagram Live series, which shout out if you were there watching our Instagram Lives in 2022. You are the
Real ones.
And spoiler alert, I'm obsessed with the Shemitah year, but it's really good information in there. So we decided to bring it back. If you have thoughts, questions, things that you think we should have covered about Tu B'Shvat, you can always message us or come to our event on February 13th at 7:30 on Zoom.
Be gentle with us. This is from 2022. So much has changed even in the last 2 years. So this was the information we were working with at the time, and we are learning and growing every day. And also there are people releasing like lots of updated, in-depth, incredible Tu B'Shvat info. That might be more relevant than this, but like dip your toe in the water.
Also, beyond infuriating that, like, quote unquote progressive, i.e., like liberal Zionist Jewish orgs will like come out with all of this Tu B'Shvat content about how protecting the earth is a Jewish value and like trees are like a Jewish value, yada yada, but like haven't said a single word about Palestine, haven't said a single word about genocide, haven't said a single word about the destruction of olive groves and the ways that genocide has completely destroyed the environment in Palestine.
So listen to Alana and Jessie 2 years ago and
3 years ago.
oh my God. I'm so scared of time. We're old and weathered. Yeah, listen to what we had to say 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Who even were we?
I'm so scared. Yeah, like what? We've been around for almost 5 years.
Ooh,
Crazy. Well, thanks for listening. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Not Your Bubby's Tour School. Tonight, we're going to be talking about my personal favorite Jewish holiday, Tu B'Shvat. If you don't know what Tu B'Shvat is, it basically is like a holiday all about celebrating the trees. So we have like a few little tidbits about Tu B'Shvat to share. Do you have any background for us, Jessie?
So full disclosure, I've been in Jewish school all week, so like I'm like, yes, I do, even if I don't.
Incredible. Perfect.
But it is like outlined in the Mishnah that Tu B'Shvat should exist. So there's a deep connection for it. However, it wasn't like a thing that much, and until like the 15th century, from what I was reading, and kind of the Kabbalistic practice really took it up, and they made it kind of expanded upon this mystical idea of the Sefer Rot being a tree and then connecting it to like earthly trees. So that's kind of where we get some of the more like mystical, cool stuff from Tu B'Shvat from. Beyond that, I don't have like a whole history or background. So if you have anything to share.
Yeah, it was so funny for me like to learn that Tu B'Shvat is so connected to like Kabbalah and like more mystic Judaism because like growing up, I always really liked Tu B'Shvat, really for no reason other than like I've always kind of been like a freak about trees and I just made that my personality trait for a while. But so like I was always so excited. There was a Jewish holiday that really like centered the trees and centered nature. I also feel like I remember my mom being pretty intentional about like at least acknowledging Tu B'Shvat. Um so then to learn that it has these like Kabbalistic origins was really also sort of affirming because I was like, here we go, like another thing that sort of like connects to this Jewish mysticism for me. It just felt very cool, and there's so much in like mysticism that is connected to nature in the same way that Judaism is really connected to nature. Um, so thinking about like herbal medicine being a really important tool, and like herbal healing. And I brought this book to share for tonight because
Oh my gosh.
felt like it
Please tell
really,
everyone.
really fits with the Tu B'Shvat theme, but it's called Ashkenazi Herbalism, Rediscovering the Herbal Traditions of the Eastern European Jews. Highly recommend. But anyway, things like this were just really cool to identify like herbal traditions and like medicine and healing, like specifically associated with like Ashkenazi Jewry, as like an Ashkenazi Jew myself. And it feels very tied to Tu B'Shvat just because the focus is really on like herbalism and plants and reverence for nature and like using plants around you for healing and all of that. So super recommend this to anyone who's interested in herbalism and is an Ashkenazi Jew and like wants to get into it. That's my plug here. Something that I feel like we should touch on is just like I feel like a lot of the Tu B'Shvat connections, at least when I was growing up, were like connected to Israel specifically. Um, and I even like saw in my research Tu B'Shvat being referred to like as a holiday, like for trees in Israel and like planting trees in Israel is like this whole big thing for Tu B'Shvat. And just thinking about how like Tu B'Shvat doesn't have to be connected to like Zionism and how it has like predates the existence of Israel. And also like how are some ways we can acknowledge Palestinian land during Tu B'Shvat, like if we're having a Tu B'Shvat Seder. So pass it off to you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk more about like the symbolic nature of the foods that we eat during the Seder because I think there's some good connections to what you just brought up. But yeah, I was looking at too the kind of co-opting of Tu B'Shvat by the Zionist movement and like really recently too, like not like within the last 50 years, becoming kind of this justification for planting trees in supposedly an effort to make the desert bloom, you know, with that myth that we've talked about before that there was no kind of nature, there was no development, there was nothing existing in Israel, which, as we know, is a straight up lie. So I think we really are able to separate Zionism from Judaism when we pay attention to the fact that Zionism is a lot younger than Judaism, and Zionism does not dictate our traditions. So, for example, I was thinking about the magic of the Tu B'Shvat Seder, which I've learned comes from Sephardi practices. So, shout out to Sephardic Jews for bringing that because that's one of the best things. It's really more laid back and less about the structure than compared to the Pesach Seder, right? Where it's like everything's dictated. There's a structure where you have to tell the story a certain way. And what's cool about the Tu B'Shvat Seder is it's really like bring in some like I think that I read one thing that was like start with washing your hands with like flower scented water.
I think we
or,
read the
like,
same article.
and bring in like whatever like essential oils are meaningful to you, the fruit, like it's so much more expansive than just the kind of very, very narrow-minded JNF, you know, like plant a tree in Israel to save. I don't even know what they think they're saving by doing that, but they're destroying Palestinian villages, so don't plant a tree in Israel. Thanks. Do something else with Tu B'Shvat, like have it on Seder and make it meaningful to you and your spirituality. It's kind of my anti-Zionist plug for Tu B'Shvat.
Period. Go off. Or like plant a tree in your backyard, or like plant some seeds in like a cup of soil. Like there are ways to plant seeds and grow trees and cherish the earth that like don't involve like Zionist ideology and practices. So um yeah, just like thinking about how we can expand the ways that we engage with Tu B'Shvat to sort of shed some of those like Zionist connections that I think have like developed after like colonization of Palestine began. And so, should we talk about like Tu B'Shvat Seders and like what that can look like for people?
Yes, I have like not a ton of background in it, but I was looking stuff up. I also wanted to mention that Tu B'Shvat is far enough from Passover that if you plant your parsley seeds on Tu B'Shvat, you'll have them for your Seder on Passover, which is so cool. Yeah, I literally just hand picked the symbolic foods that I wanted to talk about. So if you want a more broad overview, that was what I was gonna go into.
Sure. So I mean, like generally, so background first, more background. Hosting a Seder for Tu B'Shvat is actually like a pretty ancient tradition that like is again connected to your Kabbalistic traditions. Um, and like is very similar to a Passover Seder, but a little less like structured. And like again, very much focused on the earth and nature and connecting to that. Um, and so your Tu B'Shvat Seder can look however you want it to look. That being said, like a more I don't know, like traditional or like framed Tu B'Shvat Seder focuses usually on like a few specific types of um fruit or nuts. It's like anything that comes from a tree, basically. Various nuts with shells or fruits with peels, like which are coming from trees. Other fruits that might have edible seeds, other fruits with inedible seeds, like pits, so like peaches or plums, wine or grape juice, again, because, you know, nature, tree, not really a tree, but same vibe. And potentially a tzedakah box as well. And like this is to sort of acknowledge all of the different places that like the food that we eat from the earth comes from. There are a lot of like vegetarian forward ties, I think, to a Tu B'Shvat Seder. A lot of the Seders that I was looking at were like, make your meal vegetarians, that like everything is plant-based. I'd say maybe go a step farther and like make your meal vegan if you want everything to be plant-based. could be a fun task. And like literally every Jewish Seder ever, you drink 4 cups of wine. And it's very much just about like acknowledging the different fruits and different fruit types and our gratitude for them, maybe making dishes out of the specific fruits and eating them at different parts of the Seder. Like, this is, I think, sort of where you can play with it as much as you want. Maybe have fruits be representative for other things. Something that I like that they did with their like Seder outline was talk about like if the first fruit that you use is going to be the one that's hard on the outside, soft on the inside. Um, the hard shell is like protection the earth gives us and reminds us to nourish the strength and healing power of our own bodies, which is like really beautiful. Um, and then they were talking about fruits that might have pits in the center, so like an olive or a date. Symbolizes this life-sustaining power that comes from the earth and reminds us of this emotional and spiritual strength that is within us. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but just sort of like making these sweet little metaphorical ties to like the ways in which we connect to the earth through these fruits and like what the fruits can give us.
You don't need a good occasion to think about Palestinian liberation, but integrating it into your Jewish practices, because if we're celebrating olives and, you know, the symbol of olives and olive trees in Palestine are super significant. So it's a good time to do a little research, see how we can support Palestinian olive trees and olive groves is really, really cool. I just love pomegranates. I like the idea that there's 613 pips. Yeah, and the parallel to the mitzvot in the Torah, which I don't know all 613 of them, but I just think that's a cool comparison. And then, of course, the almonds, signifying that the almond tree is always the first to bloom, and there's the connection to the Torah with Aaron. He has like the almond staff, like, and it blooms. And anyway, it's really cool. But the most important one is carobs, which I don't eat carobs on the regular, so I'm gonna have to figure it out. But they represent that they take a longer time to grow than any other fruit that we're talking about. And it reminds us that we can invest in the future. And this story, which is in our favorite Honi, is the circle maker, and he in the Talmud, he passes somebody who's planting a tree, and this person is very, very old, and Honi asks, you know, like, why are you planting this tree? You're never going to live long enough to see the fruit that it bears. And the person says, yeah, but I'm planting it for the next generation. And so in the way that, and that's a carob tree that they're planting, so that the carobs represent kind of investing in our future and investing in a future we can't envision yet, or investing in a future that will benefit other people in a way that will benefit ourselves. So that was my connection to, I'm just checking if there was anything else. Yeah, to the food in the Tu B'Shvat Seder. Also, though, that any fruit is good. I think they said there's 30 different types of fruits that you can like honor at the Seder. So if you get grapes, if you get anything, like, it's all good.
Yeah, just sort of like acknowledging that any way that feels good for us to practice like is worthy, especially like as a busy person. Sometimes I'm like, God, like I really should have put more effort into like planning a Tu B'Shvat Seder, because now it's like happening like Sunday into Monday, and I'm definitely not going to prepare Tu B'Shvat Seder, but like maybe being extra intentional about just like eating a piece of fruit and thinking about where the fruit came from that day, or like spending a little extra time watering my plants that night, or like drinking a glass of wine, and like thinking about how much I love beer, you know? Really like however feels good for you to observe, or however much like capacity you have, like is super valid as well. But yeah, we'll like sort of link to some of the things we talked about. We do have like a favorite, very cute Tu B'Shvat YouTube video. I can't really remember if it has any Zionist overtones. If it does, obviously we're not endorsing those, but overall it's very sweet, and like the person who talks about Tu B'Shvat in it is just like, I don't know, very heartwarming to us, I think. And it goes over like Seder stuff and like how to honor Tu B'Shvat. So we'll plug that. It's very cool. And Jessie, I know you had some organizations you wanted to shout out.
Yes, 100%. I was introduced to this idea of the rootedness of trees and the ways that tree roots, and specifically, I think they were talking about mycelium, for mushrooms communicate and like help each other get resources of kind of the celebration of that nature. That was from a podcast called Jews Talk Racial Justice, which is April Babkin and another awesome leader. And that's just a really great podcast. And oh yeah, that brought up kind of the anti-capitalist nature of Tu B'Shvat, which we didn't talk as much about, but I think is awesome. And like if you just rest, especially because it's a Shemitah year, I bring it up every time, but if you rest on Tu B'Shvat, you're honoring it. Also, Ritual Well had like a huge collection of beautiful poems about Tu B'Shvat and other resources. Open Sea Door has beautiful prayers for Tu B'Shvat, and then I'm always plugging this, but yeah, Verdant Dreams of Olam Haba, The World to Come, has these beautiful little like intros for the months and talks a lot about like ways to honor Tu B'Shvat, especially in a Shemitah year. So super grateful for all the incredible Jewish resources out there that we constantly use.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us tonight. Or whoever's like watching this in the future. Thanks everyone. See you next week. Bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Making Menches. As an explicitly anti-Zionist grassroots org, we don't receive any institutional funding or support. Please consider supporting our work by funding us. You can find the donation link on our website, makingmenches.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Making Menches. We host monthly Shabbats both in person and online, so make sure to sign up for our newsletter, which is on our website, to get updates.
Making Menches, the podcast, is produced by Elana Lipkin and Jessie Sander. Intro music is by Nate Sander. Editing by Jessie Sander.
Bye.